back in the mix here. Struggles a little bit ahead of time with the video, but I think I sorted it out. So, I'm still getting the HUD set up. It can be tricky to use Poker Tracker with a Mac, but I think I'm getting there. It's still not quite great, but you know, what are you going to do? I made a new HUD setup so that I can run some of the more simpler stats for my 6 max tables. I find it just a little bit easier to keep track with less stats, and that's just more useful when you're running more tables so that you don't get overwhelmed with all the numbers you're being shown. So you can see I changed it just to VPIP, PFR, 3-bet, C-bet, and fold to C-bet. So you could add probably maybe call 3-bet pre-flop, but I don't know, I just felt like these were enough stats for me, and you can drill down deeper like this if you want to see more data on individual players. So let's see, I just booted this up. I think I lost maybe a couple of blinds while I was setting up the stream or the recording. King 10 off is kind of maybe a marginal open from this spot, but it's okay. Can't be too bad, 5-handed. This is interesting. Open and then a 3-bet on the button. Pretty active player over 5 hands, not a ton of data. I think just optimal to fold here. It's going to be pretty hard to continue playing out of positions. I'm going to continue betting on this board on the right, where we have a lockdown, basically it's a lockdown board as Phil Goffman described. This is a massive edge for the pre-flop opener. Interesting, so maybe we'll see some showdown hands here. Looks like it went call the 3-bet, and then the, okay, it was just drawing dead. So you 3-bet ace-jack suited, the original opener calls, and then open jams on 8-4 jack-jack, which seems a little spewy. Presumably not a very good player. I could take a note of that, but it's probably not that big of a deal. I doubt I'll see him again. Short stacking and then open jamming there seems like a bad play. Just unlikely to get called by worse. So yeah, gonna do two-handed or two-tabled here for probably the entire recording. As I've said before, I'm not very familiar with doing this, so if I make mistakes as I am playing the hands and trying to talk, I apologize. This guy seems pretty good. I mean, I played with him with a couple of hands before. I think maybe not recorded here, but I remember him being competent. So open, we 3-bet, he calls. I think we're C-bet this flop with the backdoor flush draw and the 2 overcards. We can check non-flush draw flops, but particularly good flop bet about half pot. You can usually bet a little bit smaller on these pots, which favor our C-betting range. We have all of the overpairs, the ace-10s, the king-10s as well. He has, at best, kind of I guess, sets and strong top pairs are the top part of his range. But it's hard for him to fight back on multi-street bets. Seems like a big hand happened over here. Yeah, second boat versus trips. That'll do ya. So this guy is run up quite quickly. I don't know if he started off the session with as much as he has right now, but he is deep stacked at this point, which is, I think, quite good and pleasant to play against. 9-3 off, gonna fold. I'm hoping to make some video more about blockers today, but it depends on what happens in the session. If it turns out we just can't get enough, hands that relay kind of blocker concepts. I'll just make one more specifically about blockers when I find a session that matches that kind of concept. But the two kinds of things I want to talk about are, or the three kinds of things I want to talk about are when you should bluff with blockers, when you should call down blockers, and future blockers, which is basically cards that in the future will be useful for bluffs because they block the strongest hands your opponent can have, but don't currently block any possible hands. Possible made hands. So yeah. You can contemplate 3-betting ace-6 off in the small blind. I just don't think it makes sense to go to war in small blind play against reasonable opponents with those kinds of marginal holdings. They'll just play too good against you, and you'll be out of position for the rest of the hand. I'm going to 3-bet 9s here against a late position opener. Classic VPIP PFR stats for my sessions so far, which have been fairly active. Not a ton of hands though. Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think it makes sense to 3-bet 9s more often than not, just given the number of combinations of ace-king, ace-queen, ace-jack suited, ace-10 suited, ace-9 suited, that, and other like king-queen hands that we're going to be 3-betting. It's good to be ahead of the ace-x range that they're going to be calling down with sometimes, the ace-x suited range that they're going to be calling 3-bets with, like ace-7 suited, ace-6 suited. To have pairs in that spot, if you've got mostly, I mean, pairs are good. They give you like 60-40s, whereas which is like an important component of being ahead of someone's 3-bet call range. That way that they can't just profitably call you down thinking that you've got like all the jack-10 suiteds, king-queen suiteds, queen-jack suiteds, and their equity is actually pretty solid because they're ahead of those hands. So throwing in those 9s and hands like that make your range overall pretty much stronger. Ace-10 off, under the gun. I mean, I think you can fold, but I generally open ace-10 off. I think ace-9 off is the cutoff at point at which I start folding. Ace-10 off can flop, obviously, as straight, so I think it's good enough to make it work, whereas ace-9 off, you can't. I'm just going to fold here. It doesn't play particularly well in 3-bet pots out of position with no suitedness. Even with this guy behind us, who seems a bit fishy. He could back raise for sure, just given the strange style of play. Okay, just 2 cents fold. No? Okay, calls. Okay, pretty solid. It's a good hand. We've been in rough shape against that particular combination of hands. Not that that's a good way to think about it, but would have been true. Obviously, it's 4-10, 7-3. They're just so bad. I don't think it makes sense to put money in the pot when you can avoid it. Especially with our VPIP and PFR being as high as they are. We're already going to have a loose range there. There's no reason to make it more loose with hands as garbage as 7-3. Even though the price is, maybe not so bad. This king 4 suited hand might get tempting. It honestly does not flop very well. There's just not that many reasons to go to war with King 4 suit out of position. You flop like not flush draws and very little connectivity to get gutters or straight draws. Let's take a look at our opponent's stats for a little bit. We don't have a lot of data on anyone. The most we have is the guy who's deepest on both tables, Imperium. He plays a lot of hands on the button, which is standard. It seems like he's not calling a lot from the big blind. Not that we have a big sample, but it's interesting. Not a lot of data here. I'm not honestly an expert at 6 max 3-bet percentage. 13 sounds low, but maybe is okay. That's probably fine. This is annoying, sorry. Don't seem to be able to make it go away. Anyway, 2 new players here. Elvis and Elman1. At some point I will write their names, which is important for every poker session. We can do that now. Elman1 seems pretty mediocre. DPY, also pretty mediocre. Imperium 85, with the 1 as the I think is a solid pick. Get led into here for 1/6 pot. Gonna call with our overs and potentially best hand. Not the best card. One-third pot now. A little bit less than 1/3 pot. One more 1/3 pot. Okay, I don't think we should call. Not much in the way of improved position with this card, and our hand does not play particularly well, so we can just mock here. Not as if like he just has ace high and is definitely ahead. But weird play. I mean, these people are not phenomenal at the 10-cent, 25-cent games. There are some people who are decent, but you'll see lots of weird plays from people across the board. So it's it's worth it not just taking notes on everything. Also, I sometimes take notes. More often than not, I don't expect like I'll play people enough to take notes on them. But if I'm going to play someone for a decent amount of time, I'm going to take more notes. It's worth it for me to take notes on those kinds of players, just because you'll see more hands with them, and that extra information might start helping you. Got a bet raise on the river here on the right. Interesting he didn't go all in. Don't know what that means, but probably not important. Looks like Imperium was bluffing anyway. Who knows? King Jack off. Certainly going to open UGG plus to 6 max. Should be looking for folds. Can play back against positions in the blinds. So I guess even with two-handed, or two-tabling, sorry, keep saying that. Even with two-tabling, there is not maybe enough action to constantly be talking about interesting situations. So it's possible I'll try doing 3-tabling or 4-tabling next. Definitely 4-tabling, there'll be enough action. But it might be hard to talk at that point. So we're going to defend here on the right with a Jack 10 off in the big blind to a less than 3x open from the deep stack with a little bit over 100 big blinds back. Unless there's a 4-bet here from one of the, either the button or the small blind. This hand flops fairly well. We're getting a great price to make the call. So, and also with second caller, definite call here. It's this interesting spot. We're going to be in position essentially on most flops, by which I mean we're almost a checking 100% of the time this flop. So they have no information on us, and we get to, in a sense, get to act last when someone c-bets and puts, or the under the gun position opener c-bets and puts the middle positioner player, the late position player, in a tough spot. So Jack 10 drawing to the queen. I think we can raise here. I'm just gonna call here. Actually, I'm just gonna jam. This guy's plays weird. Jacks. So Jacks, drawing dead. We're not gonna have many bluffs, like Queen 10, Jack 10 are the only bluffs we're gonna have. And we're gonna have not that many value hands either. King 9, 9, 9, deuce, deuce. The Jack 10s play okay with the gutter and the overcards to second pair. I don't think he's deep enough to 3-bet. I don't really want to call. So I think if the Queen 10s and Jack 10s are going to be the best hands to bluff with the gutters because there are no flush draws, and we want to be raising 9, 9, deuce, deuce, and king 9, then I think it's good to mix those hands into your raising range as well. Puts a lot of hands in tough spots. On the left, the reason why I decided to jam the a6 of diamonds, I felt as if he was deep enough, he was shallow enough that it was a good sizing to get it in. We block his best hands. I don't think he was quite deep enough to just flat. It wouldn't have been that bad. He had 12 back-ish. It would have left 5 in the pot, so it'd be 2 streets we would have played. But given his spew he played before, I just felt he wasn't. I felt like a6 was a good hand to just jam it in, get the money in, and take my 30% to showdown, likely 30% to showdown if he has like an ace-high hand that's better than ours, or we get to just get him to fold like the random garbage that he's decided to 3-bet there. Maybe not the best rationale, but I think it's okay. It's a good flop. Gonna be c-betting. 7 of hearts would be a fun card. Okay, so we're down, what, 12 from that jam? Could be worse. I mean, a lot of spots like that, it's tempting to call because you're in position and you have an edge against the player who's clearly just bad. But I also think it's not worth it to put yourself in that kind of leveling game. A6 of diamonds flops okay. You flop a lot of hands where you're afraid of being dominated and backdoor draws you have to hold on for. Jamming just lets you realize 100% of your equity at that point in time, plus all fold equity that you have against hands that you're probably not that far ahead of, like King Queen. And so I think the combination of realizing your equity plus fold equity usually justifies plays like that. I'm going to call here in the small blind, looking for a 7, 3-betting worse hands or much better hands. It's kind of in the middle of our range, and we want to play for stacks with sets. So I'm okay to call here and hopefully bring in the big blind. I'm thinking of maybe I'll play some Pilo. I don't think I particularly am strong in Pilo, but I like the game, and I think it makes for an interesting recording to mix it up and play lots of different kinds of games. I also think playing Pilo makes your game just overall better. Gonna be folding here, just too many aces and king X's in the opener's original range. So, yeah. Okay, so sevens we lost there. Collecting some more stats on people. Not sure how useful they are right now. Ideally, at some point I can step up in stakes. I'm not trying to put more money on America's card room because I have a lot of it in Bitcoin, and I find that is more profitable than poker at this point. So if we can run it up for what I have, we'll hop up to 25 cent, 50 cent, and we'll see where that goes from there. Gonna call on the right here. Pretty great hand. I mean, a great hand to call. Suited, king high, good kicker. Three betting, I think, is a little aggressive. So we flop a hand that, if we're behind, we're just dead. And if we're ahead, we're only a little bit ahead. These spots are hard, but this is interesting. I think this is just a check here and hope to get to showdown. I don't expect him to overbluff here, but I don't think we can really bet for any real value or protection. I mean, if he bets, we just have to fold. It's interesting, I mean, because we can definitely have better hands. We can have some weak flushes, so it's going to be okay. Just going to let this one go. Gonna raise kings on the left. It's nice we get 3-bet. In position, just gonna make it 570. Hopefully it's a juicy price for him to jam over. And we don't need to make it super big. Usually want to 4-bet smaller than you would 3-bet in terms of the proportion to the pot, just because you are getting closer and closer to getting stacks in and your range gets stronger and stronger. So they don't need as they're getting worse and worse price for given your range to call. Looking for a jam. Interesting flop. I think I'll check this back if it checks to me. We can get it in on later streets, and we can under-rep our hand. Okay, he just bets. I guess we'll call. If he has a 10, we'll get stacked. If he has a bluff, we want him to continue bluffing. A 9 gives him a ton of equity if he has one of the backdoor flush draws or straight draws. Queens, not going to be good. We hold. Strange way playing queens to not sit a 5-bet pre with that kind of stack size and the pot size. Solid flop for us on the right here. Backdoor, straight draw, backdoor flush draw, 2 overs. Gonna definitely c-bet this flop. Mediocre turn. If he has a pair, he's not gonna fold. It doesn't bring any extra draws for us to either bluff or to continue on with made hands. So there are very few made hands that bet here, and besides the overpairs. Gonna check this. Not a great card to continue. Interesting run out. We blocked the flush. We blocked some of the draws, which is also a problem, like Jack 9 or Jack 7 or Queen Jack. Yeah, I mean, it was a close spot. We blocked both the made hands and the draws. I guess we block, well, I don't know, more of the draws? I mean, we block a lot of the clubs, but we double block the straight draws, the combinations of straight draws. It's a close spot. If we raise, we rep 10x only. What rivers are we going to bluff there? I guess rivers with clubs that don't block that draw. I think that's enough that we could have pulled through. Like, if we don't just, I mean, like Jack of clubs maybe just like a mixed hand, but there'll be many clubs that don't block straight draws that we can raise. It's tough because we would not raise a flush, and so we really only rep 10x, which is maybe too narrow, and I think is a good reason just to fold that spot. So in short, there are better bluffs, and there are better runouts that let us rep more hands than that specific hand. Like another club that's not a 10 that brings straight, where the jack actually acts as a blocker for the straight, not just as a blocker for his misdraws. You gotta rep more hands, I think, just in general, if you want to pull off that bluff. Discipline is important. Ace King suited, gonna open it up. Ace deuce off, gonna fold. So it's okay flop. Backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, 2 overcards. Gonna continue to ancient bet here. Don't think I get bluff raised too much, only by 7-9. It's the only really strong candidate, suited candidate. Pretty mediocre turn. Doesn't give us any additional equity. I think it's gonna be a turn we're gonna give up on. We can even continue bluffing on like 7s or 5s or 9s that bring straights. Or clubs. Oh no, sorry. Gonna fold. On the right, I think we can jam or call, or fold. Guys, I'm pretty tight. Leads me towards folding. Ace-Jack is just not a phenomenal hand to call and go to the flop with. You don't flop super well. And I think if we want to play, we should just jam. I mean, 17 hands isn't a ton, but he hadn't 3-bet like at all. It's close. I think jamming and folding are close. I don't think you can call. I mean, the fact that he's not super deep is what makes the calling better out of position. You don't get wrecked too bad when you get reverse implied odds. The reverse implied odd situation gets realized. Yeah, I mean folding can't be too bad. Against his very specific his range at that point with a tight 3-bet, we're probably not doing too great. I don't think we've got too much fold equity, and I don't like calling out of position with yeah, with not a hand that flops very well. It was interesting though. The queen's hands is strange. I should probably make a note. So he 3-bet, I 4-bet, didn't 5-bet jam for under 100 bigs. Gonna check king 6 off here. Pretty mediocre hand. It's a good flop. I'm probably just gonna bet here. Check raising, we don't really rep much in terms of bluffs. If he has 6, he's gonna fold anyway. I think I'm gonna represent. I'm gonna overbet here, as if I have a flush draw or a straight draw. If he has 6, I think he's gonna fold anyway. If he has a king, I don't think he's ever gonna fold. That's an interesting spot. I mean, I think overbetting is nice just because his range is so capped after he calls pre. I could do that very easily and would do that with many draws that have a ton of equity against either single pairs or ace high. And so I think then it makes sense to do it with your strong hands, which is king 6 is definitely within the strong hand range there. One of the best we can have. We can't have king queen because we would have 3-bet. Or I mean, we just opened pre after he limped. Can't have any king x. Can't have king king or queen queen. So then it's just like sixes, king 6, and was it a deuce? So deuces and king deuce. So yeah, I think king 6 is definitely one of the hands you just want to just put the pressure on. If he had called down, I would have had interesting decisions on spades and straightening rivers, but I would have probably had to bet small and fold to jams, which I think is okay, just given I don't think we're going to get over bluff. We're going to get bluffed there too much after a guy just limps. He's not repping all that much. So maybe we should call, but it would have been interesting. Ten five suited. Definitely just a fold to an under the gun open. Definitely a fold to under the gun open and 3-bet. So it looks like that big stack who was sitting at the top of both tables is left. Two new players here, one left, one on the right. I like that I'm now collecting more stats on this 10 cent, 25 cent collection of players. It definitely is better to have more stats. Obviously, they have more stats on you as well. I am convinced that all these people are using Poker Tracker or some equivalent HUD. It makes sense just given that it costs like $75, which is like 3 buy-ins at 10 cent, 25 cent. And you're going to be using it to track data, which will definitely reward you if you're using it properly more than 3 buy-ins. So anyone reasonable would take a HUD here. Gonna open an ace queen suited for sure, obviously. Got 3-bet here on the left. I'm gonna 4-bet jam. No sizes, otherwise makes sense. Calling out of position, I think is not great with this particular hand, even though it's fine. It's probably a winning play. I just think where our range, this hand is a pretty strong hand for our range, and it's good to just get it in, especially against someone with not a huge stack. Um, just pre and realize your equity. A little bit of a slow roll there. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I mean, it's hard to say this. Obviously, we ran good and won there, but ace queen, that 30% equity that you get when you jam and they just have a better ace than you should not be underlooked. It is definitely a really critical part of any kind of 3-bet bluffing range. Adding your fold equity to that, plus that 30%, frequently gives you just a winning strategy against very tight opponents to just 3-bet and 4-bet jam, or 2-bet and then 4-bet jam, and they fold a decent amount in the hands they call, like the jacks and tens and ace king, you still have 30% against and you're completely fine. I mean, you'd rather have more, but it will do. We could have called there. I made that argument in a previous hand when we had ace jack. I think ace queen suited is definitely a better hand to call than ace jack off. You flop flush draws and better straight draws or similar straight draws, but flush draws and better top pairs and better middle pairs. So I definitely think it's worth contemplating a call there. I think I might call against someone who I thought was very strong, and well, no, I mean even against strong players, you're just gonna get barreled off. I think against a very tight player, maybe it's a call. Try to realize flush equity against a tight bad player who plays perfectly when you just 4-bet jam and they call with all their good hands and fold all their weak ones. So I'm going to defend Jack 7 suited, flop straight draws and flush draws and solid pairs against a non-UTG opener. We flop a Jack and then turn trips, going to c-bet here or bet here. We can have many diamond draws and things like that. His hand's likely just going to fold here, but okay, we get a call. Interesting card, brings a one-liner to the straight. I kind of want to check and let him bluff with missed flushes. And just we're always calling. Straights are good. What's nice about that check call spot is there are two missed flushes, the flop and turn missed flush draw. And if we bet and get raised, it's a super nasty spot. We definitely protect ourselves from getting bluffed off by having trips in that spot. And without blocking any of the draws, it gives him way more combos of diamonds and hearts there. So I think it's a great spot to check call. Even a hand as strong as trips. I think overall that makes you a tough player to combat with that strategy. 8-5 off is really garbage. It was a less than UTG, it was a non-UTG opener, less than 3x, and he got a caller. We're kind of deep against this guy who's not very good. I'm going to call. It's probably not great. I'm going to bet here. We can have many ace-x and jack-x. Don't need to bet super big since they've represented weakness. If we get a call, we're just going to give up. I guess we're just going to give up. I don't know if our bet would have gone through, but in that spot, there are just no draws that can come that improve your bluffing range to a strong range. And even with a hand that's as bottom, as low as 8-5 off is in our range, We have to bluff sometimes. So maybe you can make an argument for betting that hand, since we are going to have a lot of ace X and jack X. So then it becomes a question of what bluffs you're going to pick. I'm not sure. I mean, a5 is so garbage. It's probably worth it just to put the bet in. We did block this straight. 5-4 would have been a straight. Might have been one of the better hands to bluff just as a result of that. I could definitely see a bluff being called for there. So we're not so bad here. After that call down on the right, I know that we missed a flip somewhere. So we're not, I think we might be up like, I don't know, $10 on the day so far, or on the session so far. Not worth really counting yet. And check out if how the lobby's doing. Take a look at the high stakes table, see what's running. Just find this interesting. 1530 short table. People in for some decent amount of money. Some of the 5-10 heads up games are running. I think these are probably very strong players, exceptionally strong. And that 50-100 game never runs, so don't know what that's about. Damn. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but looks like our DPY guy got stacked. What table was that? That was the 3 table. We'll come back to a sec. Get led into. Or not just led in the small blind. It's okay. So I see a flop. DPY bets 26, calls 26, turns an 8. Check, check, deuce, check, bet, calls. For 100 big blinds. Pretty crazy. Definitely a bad line for ace-king at that point. Gonna 3-bet ace-king here. Speak of the devil. I like making it bigger, out of position. Can even make it like 3. I think 265 is fine, between 3 and 4x. You almost always want a 3-bet. Okay, we're just gonna 4-bet get it in here, 5-bet get it in here. Best hand to 5-bet get it in is bluff. Block all the strong hands, and you've got decent amount of equity against anything besides aces, and they frequently call you with worse. There you go. Worst case scenario. King, king. 4. Damn. Okay. That will also sometimes happen. So we open to 1 over the limper. Get 3-bet. DPY calls. Getting a great price, 2 to get 7.35, so to be right, 2 over 9.35. Nearly 5 to 1. So I'm going to make this call. 8-4 suited. Probably just fold this. Just going to fold here with our backdoor draw. Not a great flop, even with the backdoor draw. So yeah, that ace-king hand, nothing you can do there. Doesn't really bother me that that's the way it plays. Obviously, ace is the worst hand that you can see when you get stacks in, but we blocked that hand and we would have been good against the rest of the cards that he could have, rest of the range he can have there. This DPY fellow seems to be tilting. Give him 3-bet here. Just gonna get it in. Strange. So we 3-bet just because I think that he's going to be opening a lot of hands at that point. Ace-6 blocks the best ones, and he's so short that we don't get punished all that much if he jams. Gonna check call here with the backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, and ace high. One of the best cards for us, aside from an ace and a spade. I think we will continue one more street. He didn't open from super early position, so you can have Jack 10, 10 9, King Jack, King 10, backdoor spades. It's one of the worst cards for us. It completes a lot of pairs and straight draws. We don't block any of them, so I'm just going to check here and probably fold if he bets. Jacks is good. So I think at this point it's pretty clear DPY is a weak player, and you should be targeting in an exploitative fashion the way that he plays. That 5's hand was very strange. I would expect a different strategy than the one that was used there. So we get 3-bet here. We're in position. We have a mediocre hand, to be honest, but deep enough I think we can call. Looking for Broadway flops. I think that counts. So if he bets, we'll just call, as we would with single pairs. If we raise, we just too often have it. Interesting card. We lose to ace-10 now. Not a super likely hand. Gonna bet big here. Yeah, I'm gonna bet smaller, I think, since we have a lot stronger hands than he after he checks. It's a weird run out. Pocket kings, pocket nines, pocket queens all beat us. Ace-10 all beat us. Ace-king, ace-jack, jack-9 beats us. I'm gonna bet like $9. Largely because we can't have most of the strong hands here aside from ace-10 and king-jack. It's a weird hand. I guess we win. So my reasoning here was that we couldn't have like the top end of that the range at that point, since we would be 3-betting kings, jacks, queens. So we'd be 4-betting kings, jacks, and queens. And then it comes down to what hands then do we value bet there, if we're not going to be value betting those hands. King jack is an obvious candidate. Jack 9 suit is an obvious candidate. The blocker on the board means there are a few combinations of both those hands. So it's 1 or 2 combinations apiece of king jack and jack 9, and then ace 10, which I have to float the flop with. So it's actually, and it's only ace 10 suited. So it's actually not that many combinations of hands by the time you get to the river. And so then the 10s, you're probably going to want to value bet most 10s, since there are almost no other combinations aside from the boats. So it's like boats and then 10s. The point then becomes like how big and what are your bluffs. So we have the missed flushes as bluffs. Let me pull it up just so I don't forget. The missed flushes as bluffs. The floats that hit, like ace high floats with hearts that pick up draws, and then bluff river. Admittedly, not that many. The point is that at the point that he checks the river, we have a range advantage, and as a result, I think that we should bet small if we're going to bet at all, because we don't have that many bluffs, and if we have a lot fewer bluffs than made hands, then we don't need to bet very big to make him indifferent between calling and folding. It's a pretty bad flop. I'm just going to check against this particular player, and I check against most players. And so, interesting, check back super fast, going to check again, hope to get showdown with king high. Seems pretty tilty right now. Nothing doing, just going to check here. King high. Pair of sixes. So we don't need to bet big to make him indifferent between calling and folding. We don't have all that many bluffs, but we do have some, including hearts. So I think it should not just be boats that are super nutted, but some tens. He has a decent number of hands I can call. Ace king, ace queen, ace jack, king queen. At that point, I think if that's enough factors to bet, and bet kind of a third pot to a quarter, between a third and a half pot. 6-2 soft is garbage. This guy's pretty bad. I still don't think it warrants defending this particular hand. But yeah, it's an interesting pot. I would imagine that we got called down with ace king there. The way that the hand played out, it makes the most sense. C-bet flop, check call turn when the 10 comes, and then check call river. We probably make more money if we raise the flop, but I think we do knock out all of the bluffs. And we don't protect our range when we have under pairs or just weak pairs there. So I think we played that fine. I made a decent amount of his stack as a result of the play. So we've run it up and down in opposite directions on these two tables. Gonna fold here. Don't have much odds. Not many cards improve our hand. 3 ways as well. Queen 7 I think is a fold. Queen 7 suited is an open. Queen 7 off is a fold. So I'm probably going to play maybe 2 more orbits on these tables and then call it a session here. I'm still trying to keep these short. I'm not sure how long I'll do this for, but I find them entertaining, so I'm going to do it for a while. Pocket 8's definitely an open. We're going to be calling it all in from the big blind if we get it, and we're looking to play reasonably sized pots with a hand as strong as eights. Obviously, this guy is pretty spewy, so it doesn't really matter what he's doing. We're always just, given that we're opening so many hands here, eights as well in the top part of our range. But I said always get it, I meant pre. This is a clear check spot. Pretty bad for a hand. We only get bluffed off by king x or 9x if we bet and we get raised. They never fold a pair. Interesting card. We're now ahead of queen 10 jack x, but are behind all straights. It's a weird size. I don't necessarily want to raise. I might even check back this. I probably wouldn't check back this river, but this turn. So, but I might. Just gonna call. So we have third nuts. It's a weird blocking bet. I'm just gonna raise this here. Very strange play. So a reason why I called the flop and raised the river was that, and maybe you can make an argument for raising the turn. Sorry, reason why I called the turn raise the river was because I felt at least by the river, if he had ace king or a king, he would have bet bigger just to start getting value. And the two events of betting 25 cents both times made me think it's super unlikely that he has a king. So at that point, I think you need to start raising hands that are straights, and an 8 is a classic. I mean, it's as good as you're going to get. It's a straight. You can make an argument for raising the turn. It just gets super nasty if you raise and get 3-bet. So I felt like just call and then raise river makes the most sense, but I could be wrong here. Pretty bad flop again. This guy's playing like a ton of hands, so I don't necessarily want to mix it up with someone who's got a random club here. I'm just going to keep checking it down. I don't think there's any value to betting. We only get better hands to call, or hands with a ton of equity to call. It's okay, run out. He bets 25 cents, we'll call. I expect a really big bet for some reason. Okay, 83 cents is also worth a call here. Wish we had a club. We have a lot of ace high with no club. We can fold those hands. Sixes seems fine. Interesting. I guess this hand makes sense to bet. I would have bet a little bit earlier, but okay. At least betting on the river is better than not betting. It's interesting, like all the actions happening on this left table, and we've got a ridiculous high VPIP. This guy is in the play 100% hands mode. Gonna c-bet here with our straight draw and our overcards. Bad hand to bluff here. He's never gonna fold a jack or a queen. If he's got an under pair, he's more likely to call. If he's got a straight draw, though we're still ahead, we can just check call here. Interesting card. Doesn't really change the state of anything. 10-9. Oh, sorry, 10-9 and king 10 get there. Or have a pair. I'm not too convinced that he's going to fold a 9. And he was never folding it straight, so just get our hand to showdown, I think is fine. This right table is super dead. 26 VPIP, 19 PFR, 70 hands. A lot of folding, not a lot of playing. So yeah, I want to talk about, I don't know, some more strategy stuff. So I'm working over what I want to talk about. We talked about some big blind play. I mean, we can talk about how to play against someone who is as spewy as DPY. Essentially, you kind of want to make your range less polarized. Because he's playing a non-polarized range, hands like a7 are much stronger than they would be against someone who's got a polarized range, where you are ahead of those bluffs, but not by much, and there are not that many of them. There are a decent number, but not too many, and there are a lot more stronger hands, which you have 30% or worse equity against. But if they're playing a ton of polarized range, like 9-6 suited or Jack 10 off, then a7 starts becoming much, much better in terms of equity because those hands are now part of the range you're competing against and they bring down the overall equity of the entire range. Gonna fold here, obviously, to an open 3-bet. I didn't notice that element 1 is on both tables. So I think I remember him being okay. So Poker Tracker lets you take notes. The machine itself takes notes on players as it watches them play. So you get some stuff for free here. Seems solid. Gonna fold 4-7 a suited to a bigger than 3x under the gun open. I feel like I should label this guy with some sort of color. We'll say blue is fish. I think I'll remember that. I don't really use these color coding devices. I mean, it can be kind of useful to just get like a visualization of what you thought at some point this player's level was. I mean, I think it'd be pretty obvious to me if I just hopped in any game at any point in time. This guy's not very good. Somehow he won something over there. So flop top pair. Obviously gonna bet here. We'd bet all of our bluffs as well as our mate hands, and ace-9 is one of the best hands we can have besides overpairs. Looks like he snap called and snap checked. Seems like one pair hands would play this way. If we get check raise, we can probably take a card just because no cards got there besides the 10, which is kind of innocuous. He's in the snap check mode. So we have to be afraid of 9-10, 9-7. Fours and deuces would raise pre. We can have better hands at this point, 9-10 and 9-7 ourselves. Aces, kings, and queens, and the straights. There are a lot of missed draws. I kind of want to bet twice, 3 times here. This is an exploit play here, and it could backfire. So the reason why that was exploitative is because we do have so many better hands: aces, queens, kings, jacks, pocket tens, 10-9, pocket nines, all 9-7 straights, and pocket fours and pocket twos. So if I'm playing a balanced strategy, I think I don't want to just bet there with ace-9 because there are so many bluffs. Oops, I meant to make it 3x. But I still bet because the way that he played the hand made it seem as if, and this is just a simple read, that he would not play this way with a much stronger hand that would be trapping, like pocket nines, pocket fours, pocket twos. We call 3-bet here with pocket twos, obviously, with a small 3-bet in position against the deep stacked small blind. He checks to us. We're going to just check this back. So yeah, that hand I think is I think one that against a strong player I would just check back. But against a player who plays kind of face up and should be check raising there with their draws and their strong hands, but it's just check calling, I think we can get value from weak nines and low pocket pairs with our particular hand. So I guess he has like either a slow played ace or like tens or nines or something like that. I don't think he's going to fold on this particular card. It's a safe card for him, and I just don't think it makes sense to bluff with the flush draw out there. We could have it ourselves, and we don't need to make twos or bluff. So the jack out there, queen 10, obviously, pocket jacks. It's a weird spot. I'm just going to fold here, but I'm suspicious. Because the only hands that improved are pocket jacks and queen 10. But the way that he played it, it seems kind of hard for him to have a bluff. So I'm going to fold. Obviously, we can have better hands. But we don't block the hearts. It'd be nice to block the straight. So maybe the best hands to call there would be hands that block the straight, that don't block the hearts, and are higher up than just pocket twos. Maybe things that beat some bluffs. Like ace-X's that I've just played that way. It's kind of hard to imagine I played an ace-X that way, but it might. Big raises from this guy. He just opens big. 9-7 off is not a great hand, and to over 3x size raise, I'm just going to fold. We get 3-bet and a call here. DPY's in the pot. It's not a huge 3-bet. We're getting a good price. Gonna call. Flop pretty well. We're going to be getting it in against either player here. Gonna check. If we see a bet and a call, we're just gonna jam it. Happy to see Elman one fold. Even if he just has like hands that we're ahead of, like, I guess if he's ace king, we're like so far ahead, maybe we shouldn't want to do that. I'm gonna jam here. Actually, I'm just gonna call. Like, I think if I'll call over here, he's super likely to fold unless he's slow playing, in which case he's never gonna fold. And if he's slow playing and he's never gonna fold, he actually is like doing really well against us. In which case, maybe if he jams, we can get away from it. Just because we got to the turn, we only have. It's hard though with a 3 and a king likely being an out, even against like aces and queens. So we get the 5 from that plus the flush draws. So we have a ton of equity, but it's still not a ton. Like it's gonna be 5 like ish plus 9, so like 14, so like 28%. And if he jams, he's got like. It's going to be close. I think it might end up being a call, but it's going to be really close. In general, I guess the jam doesn't achieve much against Elman 1. If he has a very strong hand and is slow played, he's just going to call it off. We never get him to really fold better. Maybe a 10. Maybe a 10 we get him to fold, like ace 10, but I expected he would just c-bet that hand. What hands, I mean, it's nice to bet. It's hard for us to have like a really, really strong hand when that turn comes off. I guess we can have a 7. Like 7-9, 7-8 suited, 7-6 suited. Pocket 10s. So there are a decent number of things we can have. In which case, maybe we do want to bluff with our king 3 suit, which is like our best bluff. I honestly think both plays are winning plays. Just becomes a question of like what's more of a winning play. King high with a flush draw to a really small bet. Backdoor flush draw, I mean. Gonna bet here. It's exploitative. I just don't think that he's gonna be checking an ace very often. Gonna call 6-5. So yeah, it's an interesting spot. I need to think about that spot a bit more. I mean, I basically think like we don't want if we jam, he's just never gonna fold a better hand, except maybe a weak 10. In which case, there's not too much value from jamming. And I guess the advantage for calling is that he can just call potentially with his kind of like maybe his slow played hands, if he did have a slow plating hand, and we get a free shot at seeing a flush on the river or improving on the river. And if we don't, then we can just either check fold to a bet, or because he's repping a very strong hand after he calls the all-in player, um, we can just um, check fold, or we can just lead ourselves on some of the scarier non-heart, non-king, non-3 cards like an 8 or a 9 or a jack. So I think it gives us the most chance to realize our flushes when we're in all-in spots on the river and we get it all in. We get the most equity, or the most portion of our money back, because we're getting it where we have money left behind when we have the flush to realize that value, and we let ourselves fold maybe on like completely terrible rivers when he's very strong when he makes that call and is almost always folding. I've definitely over-explained this hand. I'm going to stop talking about it now, but I find it interesting. I think this will be my last set of hands here. I'm going to sit out this big blind. Gonna call. Gonna call a 3-bet and a caller in position against this caller who has a lot of dead money in the pot. And we'll see again, because we were acting as like kind of like the big blind with an open under the gun opener and a caller. We get to see this. We put this person in a squeeze spot, and if it goes bet jam, we can fold. If it goes bet fold, we can call. If it goes check check, we can make it to the river. We can make it to the turn with a lot of equity. I expect to see a bet at this point. He's probably fiddling with the actual sizing. I'm going to bet here. I expect him to have kind of overcards. And I think we're ahead of this guy's range, who might also have like queen jack suited, king queen. Can still obviously have like pocket 8s, pocket 6, pocket 6s. We're ahead of like pocket 7s and pocket 5s. Basically, I think we're ahead of both players. And if not, we can make up with either a 10 or a 9 or a 7 on the river. And we have a lot of bluffs here, I guess. It's a weird raise. I'm going to call given the price. I'm not super happy. I think it's likely we're behind here at this point with a raise. We do block the nuts. Okay, then we lost a hand there, big hand at the end there. I called because I felt as if we decently blocked his best hands, pocket 9s, some 2 pairs, and the straight with a 10. And given that and the sizing, I think we've got enough reason, enough equity to call. I mean, you don't need to be right too often, 11 to 27. So it's a really small bet. We have to put 11 in to win 36. I'm obviously not super happy about it, given just like it's kind of hard for him to have a bluff. So how'd this go again? I have 9-10 suited, I make it 3, he makes a 9.5, the big blind just cold calls, and we call. 6-8-9, checks around. He just min raises. I mean, this line is so strong. Bits 42 into 117. So we need to be right. $20 of the time. I mean, it's definitely tough, right? Because, like, how many bluffs does this guy have? Not that many. Like, literally not that many. I mean, I can't think of, like, a single one, actually, at this point. Except just, like, random overcards he's turning into a bluff. But we're getting such a great price and we block his best hands. It's a tough spot. I wish there were more, like, clear bluffs that could be had, but there's a complete rainbow turn. He just has to have, like, a complete random thing, like a 7, I guess. He just has to have a 7. That's the only bluff he can have. Like 7-6 or 8-7 or 9-7, which he's turning into a bluff. I mean, that's a decent number of bluffs. So I guess a decent number of bluffs plus the price plus the blocker plus the strange line can be a call. I could be wrong on this one. I'm going to think about this one a little bit more. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. I had a good time. And yeah, this is Ben, and I'm signing off.